multinational security force and under the US President Donald Trump's ceasefire plan. Uganda's Defense Minister Kiryowa Kiwanuka told Parliament that US President Donald Trump has contacted his Ugandan counterpart Yoweri Museveni to request Kampala's contribution to the International Stabilization Force, which would operate in areas of Gaza not under Israeli control. The decision marks Uganda's first public commitment to a peacekeeping role in the Middle East, expanding on its existing military presence in Somalia, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Let's speak now to Godwin Toko, lawyer and human rights activist at the Agora Centre for Research in Uganda. A very good morning to you, Godwin, and thank you so much for speaking to us. I'd like to get your impression just under the terms which this Ugandan force is going to be deployed, and what justification, if any, has the Ugandan government given for its involvement?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me. But the terms are still confusing. I mean, no one really knows all about this. If I could just spend a minute to give you the context of this, is that yesterday Parliament was going to sit to debate other issues. MPs received the order paper. Then after some time, they were told that there is an amendment to the order paper they received. That is now just a few minutes before plenary. That amendment was the inclusion of a discussion on the deployment of Uganda's army. It's called the Uganda People's Defense Force. So I'll keep saying UPDF. So the deployment of UPDF to Gaza. Now that came by surprise. A few weeks ago, there was a headline by the leading government newspaper saying that Uganda may deploy in Gaza. But apart from that, apart from the debate yesterday, there's not much that we know about this. Not many saw this coming, like you said. And yeah, so that's where we are. There's a bit of confusion, but I guess maybe to come clear as time goes by.
So, as you say, there's a lack of clarity, but to your mind, from a constitutional and international law perspective, what makes this particular deployment distinct from others that we mentioned that Uganda has been involved in before?
Yes, that's a good question. So first, Uganda has been, for context, Uganda is deployed in Somalia, Central African Republic. It's deployed in the DRC and it's deployed in South Sudan. And we are also told that other places but that is not confirmed. So what makes this distinct is that all the other deployments were within the African continent in the context of Pan-Africanism, in the context of there is a terrorist group in Somalia called Al-Shabaab. The Somali government reaches out to Uganda. They have got funding from the EU or from the US and their partners, and they say we need Mogadishu stabilized, we need the airport stabilized, the presidential party is protected and things like that. And then Uganda gets in and then starts the peacekeeping. Of course, with time it expanded. From 2007, when Uganda first went to Somalia, it has expanded. Now you have so many other countries there. Similarly, with South Sudan, there's always instability in South Sudan. So when the government feels like it has been pushed to the edge by the rebels, it calls upon Uganda. Uganda goes there. And many times, the joke in Uganda is that the Ugandan government keeps the South Sudanese government in power. Otherwise, without it, it would have been overthrown. Now, this is unprecedented. This is so many miles away from Uganda, across the African continent, on the other side of the world. And crucially, Uganda had taken a position that Uganda is currently the chair of the non-aligned movement, 150 plus countries, including maybe, I think even South Africa. So because Uganda is part of that alignment, I mean, head of that non-alignment, many people think that Uganda wouldn't be directly involved in this conflict. Now, the way this is being presented is that Uganda is not actively taking a side, but it can be that for a while. Maybe what happens if they go there and they're being shot at? Do they just watch as they're being shot at? Do they start shooting back? If they shoot back, how does that play out? And also in this context, you see that the deployment is under the President Trump's board of peace. I'm saying President Trump because it's really not an American thing. It's just that President Trump has this thing with a group of, I think, about 25 countries out of the 60 invited. So there are so many issues here. But yeah, maybe again, we see how it goes.
And that's precisely the point, as you say. So the deployment and just also trying to understand the legal mandate and how President Yoweri Museveni would then explain it to Ugandans, should he of course feel compelled to do any such thing, that this is obviously not something that has been sanctioned.
Can I just say something there?
Can you hear us?
If I could just have a word there. Yes, I can hear you. Can I just have a word there and say that in the Ugandan context is that the Ugandan government does not normally explain such deployments to the country. It's only because Uganda is in the DRC, Uganda is in Central African Republic, Uganda is in South Sudan. None of these is explained to the Ugandan public. No, the president does not call a press conference and tell us what's going on. What happens is that they just deploy. And then much later, you hear that even money is being passed by the government or parliament to go and fund the deployment. Now, I think what makes this distinct is that because there is the US involved and it's a bigger, maybe because they don't want the international media scrutiny, that's why they had to go to parliament. But I think if they could avoid it, they would have avoided it. And that's why yesterday, the way it was brought on the order was rather shabby.
I think you're pretty much making my point for me, which is what I'm saying. It was pretty much tongue in cheek to say I don't see President Museveni feeling compelled to explain it to Ugandans, but more pointedly is the fact that you also spoke about what are the parameters of this mandate should they be shot at, because it doesn't take place under the United Nations Security Council. Is it understood then to be a favor to US President Donald Trump? And what is also interesting is that it says that Uganda will be deployed in areas not under Israeli control. So those who are being deployed, what are they understanding that they're there to do? And it's speculation, but what do you think?
So what I hear is that a few days ago, President Trump announced that there's a peace deal in Gaza. That peace deal will mean that Hamas voluntarily, that is a very, very big term there, disarm, and then there is a stabilization force. And what I've read is that in addition to Uganda, I think even Morocco is going to deploy, and some other countries, but that is still not yet clear. I know what is clear is that Uganda is one of them. So that they will deploy in areas where there's no Hamas and there's no Israel forces, IDF, and then they stabilize those places. They train they train the police that will take over after Hamas to ensure that there is stability and there is peace in Gaza. Now, for an age-old conflict like that, this is really, really, really wishing for too much. I mean, I wish my country well. I have friends who are in the Uganda People's Defense Forces, the UPDF. I hope that they pull this off, but under the current circumstances, with the facts known to me, I think that this is really, really asking for someone to squeeze juice out of a rock, really.
And part of that juice that they'd want to be squeezing out, for me, which perplexes me, is there needs to be some recognition of not only sovereign authority, but a legitimate claim of self-defense. In the Uganda military mind, who are they serving? Are they serving the people of Gaza? Are they serving the people of Israel or the United States? And I recognize that you may not be able to answer all of these questions, but do you think these are considerations that are coming to the fore?
Yes, they are. Even yesterday at Parliament, there was that bit where, so there were, the Ugandan Parliament is a unique parliament where there are military officers deployed. So Uganda has members of parliament who represent the army, 10 of them. One of them was saying that Uganda has this rich record of promoting peace and stability. Well, that is to some extent a very, very truthful statement. So he said that because of that, we are going to take on this important role of ensuring that there's stability in Gaza. So from the point he was talking and defending this, even the statement of the minister himself, Kiryowa Kiwanuka, was more like, we are not going to take a side. We are going to go there as a neutral force to ensure that there is stability in Gaza. Now, one, the important context is that they're deploying under the board of peace. I don't think President Trump does not have a side in this conflict. Two, when in the thick of the Iran-America-Israel war, there was the Army Commander of Uganda tweeting that he offered the Ugandan army to be deployed for the ground troops that America was not doing and Israel was not doing, that they could go and fight. What everyone was fearing for me said we could go and do. Then after, I think a week or so after that tweet, it was tracked to have been in Israel. I think someone tracked his plane online and the plane landed somewhere in Israel. And then after Israel, it came back to Uganda. So now you see that in this context, it's hard to argue that Uganda does not have a side. Uganda seems to have a side. And because Uganda seems to have a side, that is going to complicate things so much. So yes, there is this thing they're telling us on paper that we're not going to have a side, we're just going to stabilize, we're not going to even fight, we're going to be like a peacekeeping force, just we have guns, but these guns are to defend ourselves and nothing more. But I mean, that can change very, very quickly. And I think that is going to change very, very quickly when the rubber hits the road.
All right, thank you so much. Much appreciated. And we appreciate your thoughts. Godwin Toko, lawyer and human rights activist at the Agora Centre for Research Uganda. speaking to us about the deployment of Ugandan forces through Gaza. Peter, you were asking, you wonder under which terms. Well, you heard it. It seems like it's a wide berth.
Fascinating, fascinating. All right, even more fascinating. Cameroon coming up.
Madapiri, Bazoshiti.